All right. Welcome. I want to welcome my guest this month because I release these only once a month because otherwise I wouldn't be able to deal with myself. Samantha Katehis is the owner and founder of Fern Fossil, and she also is an art instructor at, remind me what that is again?
It's Studio Montclair.
Studio Montclair in Montclair, New Jersey. Welcome, Samantha.
Thanks. I'm really excited to be here, of course. I'm excited to tell you a little bit more about myself.
I'm excited to have you.
Yeah.
It's been a while. I haven't actually seen your face in a long time.
Yeah, I'd say probably a few years, right? Like maybe at least 2 or 3.
I think I asked about you at Josh was having like one of those drive-in things at the Kearney Point. And I was like, where's Sam? Can I see her through the window of a car?
Yeah, I think I was sitting in the bed of a pickup truck with my other friend, like all in the back where the food truck was. So.
Oh, okay. And then it got dark, so I didn't see anybody. And then I haven't seen anybody in a long time, so everyone looks different.
This is true. And we all were socially distancing. I think like that was when there was that kind of like second wave in New Jersey where like there was a bit of a spike and we were all sort of like staying in our little pods.
Yeah.
So that's probably why I wasn't socializing that day. It's
probably for the best.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, Samantha and I know each other from Newark, from the Newark art scene. And tell me, Samantha, about your background in the arts. You have a background in the arts. I want to hear all about it.
I do. When I think about it, I feel like it's a little convoluted. Like there's just a lot going on. But I don't know. I've been on the scene for, at least 10 years. I grew up in Newark, in the North Ward.
I did not know that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that. I think, sometimes like people will sort of size me up and look at me and be like, well, you don't sound like you're from here. Where are you from? And then when I say that I'm from here, they'll usually say, oh, you're from the Ironbound. And, I lived in the Ironbound for maybe like 2 or 3 years, something like that. But that was like as an adult. So I didn't grow up in that area. I grew up in the North Ward, sort of like on the border of East Orange and Newark.
Wow. Sweet. Yeah, I get the same because I grew up in Newark, but I grew up in the Ironbound, but like in the industrial area of the Ironbound. So like right off of the highway and like behind a Superfund site and in the flight path of the airport.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize that. And I feel like a few years ago when I would kind of venture out and I was making friends outside of town, right? A lot of people would sort of say, oh, Newark, like the Ironbound, like I really love the restaurants there. And so that was so like they have this very narrow lens of what Newark is. And that's either restaurants on like one strip of Ferry Street because they don't venture beyond like a certain point. And then you have like, oh, well, there's a lot of crime in the other spots, which is, it's not very fair. I think that Newark is a much more diverse city. It's a little more nuanced than here are a couple of restaurants and then there's crime. It just, it's not fair.
It's true. It is like a typical, like you're right, like that narrow vision of somebody who doesn't understand a city landscape, right? Because I mean, Manhattan, like in the early 2000s was not a great place to be. And now it's like Disney World. Like I mean, maybe not at this moment, but like growing a little bit older, I felt safe in any particular place in Manhattan. Saying like, wow, I can't believe that there's no grit left in this town, that I could literally just like, walk around with like dollar bills hanging out of my pockets and stuff like that. And like somebody would be like, hey, you dropped $1. But I like the grit. I love the grit of a city. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, cities are diverse in, culture, diverse in people, diverse in a lot of different socioeconomic issues that make it what intrinsically is a city. So they're just like crime, Portuguese food. It's like, get out of that, get out of it, get out of it. And then there's like amazing arts. And then they're like, what? There's arts? What? You know? And it's like, of course there's arts. It's a city. What did you think?
Totally. And I feel like in a lot of ways, like Newark is sort of this, and it has been like this beacon for the arts because it's such a major city. Newark is one of the largest cities in New Jersey, I think, if not the largest.
Yeah, I think Patterson is second largest, maybe. I don't quote me on that. I didn't fact check that. I just said that.
Yeah, and we have multiple wards, so we have different sections of the city, so it's quite large. But I do feel like Newark is sort of getting its dues, or it's getting, I think, the attention that it sort of deserved for a really long time now. So that I mean, it's great. It's great that we're being recognized as an art city. I think that has a lot to do with the current administration. I think that has a lot to do with some of the great like nonprofit arts organizations that we have in the city, and have had in the city. So, yay Newark.
Yay. And so what kind of background in the arts do you have that led you to, to teach art, but also to open up Fern Fossil? That's probably two totally different questions, two totally different answers.
Well, I guess I'll start with undergrad. So undergrad, I went to Montclair State, but I didn't enter as an arts major. So I was undecided. And then I sort of decided like somewhere along the way that I wanted to do graphic design. But as I was taking like gen ed like courses, and there's some like arts requirement courses that you have to take for any arts major. And I took a fine metals and jewelry class. I think it was called metalwork and jewelry. And I sort of I got bitten by the bug. I got really excited about working with my hands. I loved the autonomy of it. I loved that, I could take a design from a sketch and turn it into like this tangible thing. And, working with fine metals, you have kind of two different things that you might do. One would be like fabrication, which is taking like a flat sheet of metal and, sawing it, hammering it, forming it, melting it, applying heat to anneal it. So you transform a flat sheet of metal essentially into something three-dimensional. And then the other aspect of that is carving a model out of wax and then casting that model into, your finished product or your almost finished product. So I found that I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed taking something from a sketch and turning it into something three-dimensional. And I mean, it went from taking one required course or one elective course to taking, a few advanced courses after that. And so that led me to this place where I started to question, like, well, what do I want to do with myself? Because I feel like I'm better at this, but also coming from a background where, I didn't necessarily have, I'm the first in my family to get a college education, and I'm not the oldest. I'm the middle child. So I have, I'm the only one with college education. Also the only one with a master's degree.
Wow.
So this was sort of uncharted territory. There was no template for what I should be doing with myself.
Right.
Because I don't really think that my parents knew what to do for us at a certain point in time because they didn't really have the experience.
I agree. I feel the same way. Do you feel like you had some guidance from school? Like, did you get some guidance from like people that were, I don't know, like instructors at maybe like a higher level, or were they saying like, these are the things that you could do if you learn how to work with metal? So yes and no. I mean,
we did have some instructors that were sort of like, okay, these are like very saleable items, or you might want to like do a trade show or something like that. So, we'd get these little like bits and pieces and pearls of wisdom. But I think at the end of the day, when I graduated, I was sort of like, all right, jewelry is going to be a hobby because I don't really see myself doing that full time. And I'll go and look for like a graphic design job. And, I had a few design jobs. This was also, I graduated during the recession. So, things were sort of in a really bad place economically, especially I think in this area. And I couldn't even tell you how many interviews I went to where I just, didn't get chosen. So I had like a bunch of like, little jobs along the way. And I was someone's executive assistant, and then essentially was managing a team of like, I don't know, it was like 6 interns. And yeah, it was great. But
But you were like, what is this? What am I doing?
Well, sort of like, I think during that time, a lot of people were sort of like preying upon the fact that people were like thirsty for work and thirsty for opportunity. So I didn't really get paid super well to be doing that. And there was this like really funny situation where, it was understood that I would be getting paid this hourly wage for like a finite amount of time. And we were going to have this meeting about like what the wage should be, right? Because like I couldn't live off of what I was making, and I was living on my own. So I remember one day sort of like seeing that my check had changed slightly, and I was like, oh, cool, like the electronic deposit is different, but we haven't had that meeting yet. So I went to, talk to my boss that morning, and she's like, oh, if you notice, like I raised your wage by $1 an hour. And I was like, actually, I wanted to talk to you about that because that's not really going to fly for me. Like I'm doing this, I'm doing another, like I was there 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, sometimes longer. And then I was like working weekends, like at another place. Like I was working 7 days a week and I could barely make rent. And I was sort of like, listen, like this isn't going to fly for me. Like I thought we were going to sit down and discuss this. And this lady, like, was out of her mind, was like, because it was like a multi-level like structure that we were in. It was like, I should have known, like in my youth, that like,
is it a pyramid scheme?
It was a weird situation. So there was like a jewelry school, and I was like teaching in the basement, like sometimes. And then I would like, the perk of it was that I was also able to kind of like use the studio. And then, I'm doing like graphic design stuff, and then there's like a whole event space upstairs. And then in the front, there was supposed to be a jewelry store. And, I don't know. It didn't seem like it was profitable. There was a lot going on. There was also supposed to be a proposed gallery, and with her artwork in it, but no one else's. But I digress. It was a very strange situation. And, I sort of addressed the pay issue. And she like started to like run up the stairs. Like she didn't want to talk to me. And I was like, oh my God, this is such a bad situation. And then eventually I got let go because I was in my early 20s and had a big mouth, and I was not happy. So I was sort of like, I probably should have walked away then, but like, we don't always make the best decisions when we're that young.
Yeah, I don't think your brain's fully formed until you're 24.
No, it's really not.
It's really not. You're just like, yeah, this is a great idea. I used to work for a lady that had an office at the Robert Treat Hotel, and she used to run some type of like pageant, like a Jamaican pageant of some sort. And I just remember like, I hardly got paid any money, but I had another job where I used to work at a place where people would paint pottery, and like you just like give them the pottery and then they paint it and then stick it in the kiln. And that was like my weekend job. And then like a couple of days a week to fill in, I was also a nanny. So I was like, and this is like all around the same time, probably. It was like 2008, 2009.
Everybody had multiple jobs. Nobody had health insurance. Like,
what was that?
And, I just remember seeing like free internship, like for 3 months. And then after 3 months, we'll like negotiate pay. And it's just like, I ran into so many of those scams. Like I'd go into an interview and then they'd be like, well, we're not going to pay you for 3 months. And I'm like, well, I'm not independently wealthy and I don't have like that level of support. So I have to go.
You would go into like these really cool, I remember going to like these really cool, like loft offices in Soho, and everyone was like wearing white with like really cool sneakers, and they were doing a zine, and they were like, oh yeah, you would be like an intern to distribute the zine, but you don't get paid any money. And I always had to weigh like, but it would be so cool to work here, but I'm not making any money and I have to get here, like I think those experiences actually too, like make me very reluctant to have an intern, or at least an unpaid intern, moments where like maybe I could use a little bit of help, but I'm very wary of the exploitation of people. I'm very wary of the fact that not everybody has the privilege to be able to work for free. Like there needs to be an exchange, a clear exchange, and, both parties have to be getting something out of it. So like, besides, obviously the employer or, the office gets free labor, right? But then what as a employer am I then providing to my intern in exchange? So that could be anything from free lunch or a stipend of some sort. Right.
But also like there should be an exchange of knowledge. Like I like, at least that's my personal feeling. Like you should leave me with, a recommendation, and you should leave me with some sort of life or professional experience that perhaps you would not have had before you walked in.
Not to go get people coffee every day
Exactly.
We just need someone to go get us coffee and pick up the newspaper.
Oh, I did that, and I walked a dog. That was fun.
I've never said yes to doing other people's dirty work. I've either said yes reluctantly with like, ugh, I don't really want to do this. Mm-hmm. Or I've said like, no, I'm not going to do it, which is probably why, there's I think the entrepreneurial spirit. There's people that are like natural leaders and don't do well taking directions because they have their own way of thinking. Mm-hmm. And then there's people that they love the direction. They want the direction. Mm-hmm.
It's weird. I'm a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. I think like I very much crave structure. So when I don't have structure, that's a problem. And I'm happy to, when I do work for others, I do my work to the best of my ability. Doesn't matter what the job is. I take it very seriously. But on the other end of that, like, I know that I have a lot more to offer than sometimes what other, places of work can kind of nurture and provide. So I think that that's probably one of the reasons why I work for myself in some capacity, because I enjoy making my own schedule. Like I have to be accountable. I know when I get up in the morning that I have a certain set list to take care of, and I know that I can do that. So it's sometimes like working for others can be very limiting.
Right.
And then, on the other end of that, being an entrepreneur can be very freeing, but there's also a lot of responsibility.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You're only to blame. You can only blame yourself if you don't do well as an entrepreneur, because you didn't pick up that phone call, or you didn't get back to that person, or you didn't fulfill that order that you were supposed to fulfill.
Exactly. But anyway, I digress. So that sort of like lasted a little while. And then I did something like when I was let go. So I did something like about a year, or maybe it was about a year, I think, where I was unemployed, but I was able to get unemployment. So that was great. And I like picked up random, teaching jobs. And I was a studio monitor at the Newark Museum Arts Workshop, which doesn't exist anymore. And then I did like a few one-day workshops, or I did, I think it was like a 6-week workshop. So, that was really cool. It was great to be able to work where I lived for once, because I'd never sort of been able to do that. And it was really great to be in that studio. I could like ride my bike over, and, I really loved the dynamic at the time. Steve Mckenzie was the director. So he was the one that kind of brought me that opportunity, or like connected the dots there. And
did Steve Mckenzie start the print club? Was that him?
So I'm not 100% sure like what his level of involvement is with that. I know that he teaches for them. I think he helped set up the studio. I don't know what his formal role is at that organization.
Because I always see pictures of him at the print club, but
yeah, I think he's very involved with the Newark print shop, but like in terms of like his formal role there, I have no idea like what that is. But I'm sure like a quick search of the Newark print shop website would probably define what that role is.
Right. We could Google that. Mm-hmm. We'll Google that.
But yeah, it was really cool because, I think I met Steve at, it was like Solo's Project House, which doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
And he was like, oh, you do jewelry, like, let's talk. And so, I'd come in on Mondays and sort of monitor the studio and like do my own work there, which was really great. And then, I had expressed my interest in teaching, and eventually that opportunity came about where he said, send me a proposal, put a class together. And, I was able to teach a couple of classes, which was really great. And, then from there, I ended up going to grad school at Pratt for industrial design.
So tell me about why the decision to study industrial design versus other types of design.
So I think that I'm a little bit better. Well, I do gravitate more towards 3D, right? 3D objects. And I think that was sort of the thing that motivated me to go into that field. But also industrial design is so much more than that. It also like, sometimes people use product design kind of interchangeably with industrial design. And that could be designing a system, designing, the very tangible things, like a glass jar, or which you can't see because of the filter.
Oh, yeah. It like disappeared for a second.
Yeah, because of the background. So it could be like designing a glass jar, or like a pencil,
right.
Or it could be designing an app, or following someone, or it could be user like research. So I mean, like, there are so many different ways that you can apply design to our everyday lives to make it better. And I think that I'm sort of like a natural born problem solver. And, maybe that was really the appeal, like the aspect of problem solving, but also at the time, what I thought was a field that was very like 3D sort of oriented.
Awesome. Very cool. Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think people who like to make things can go in a lot of different directions, and getting a master's may also not necessarily prepare you for, still what you're going to do, but you end up gaining the experience a little bit to sort of figure out like, well, I can make this tangible thing. And maybe you end up actually like producing a complete set of items that can be, easily sold, or you can kind of pitch it to a company, or say like you have that kind of portfolio built, because that is essentially what you do. And getting, an arts degree, right? And a higher level arts degree is kind of like building that portfolio. And so now what do you do?
So now I sort of, well, I guess we have to kind of go back to the teaching. I really love teaching. I loved teaching in Newark. I love teaching adults. So a lot of people are like, oh, you teach, art, you must teach children, right? So that's like, I think the big stereotype. I also mostly teach the disabled population.
Oh, wow.
So, which I'm very passionate about, kind of providing that service and being of service to that community, because I feel like the educational field or the offerings for that particular population can be very limited. And I'm lucky to work with our director of arts education, who's Armisi Smith. She's also like a Newark artist and curator. And she's also like a staunch advocate for the disabled community and disability in the arts. And, I think we sort of share the same view in that we should be providing high level arts education to everyone, right? Like this should be available to everyone. So I consider myself really lucky that I get to provide all of the life experience, all of the, the 7 years of like formal education or higher education. At one of those degrees being a very expensive degree. But I get to impart all of that knowledge onto my students, and they have that at their disposal. And, sometimes we have individuals that are looking for more of an art therapy kind of situation. And
I was just going to ask you that. Do you see it? Do you teach something specific, or is it more just sort of a hands-on in terms of therapeutically working, like, motor skills and, eye hand coordination and things like that? Or is it more in depth as well?
So, just like you and I are very different, those within the disabled community are also very different.
Right.
And I get the freedom, and I'm like, blessed to be able to work with people one-on-one and meet them where they're at. And, I think that coming from a formal education, kind of seeing what public school was like, seeing what a public university was like, or a state university was like, and then also interacting and, because Pratt is actually a private school.
Right.
So interacting in that environment, is sort of, I've seen all aspects of education essentially, or I feel like I have a pretty good idea of like what works and what doesn't work. And I like to approach my students from the direction of compassion, empathy. I like to talk to them about what their goals are, and just kind of take it from there. I feel like there's a lot lacking in our like formal educational system, unless you go to something like a Waldorf school or like a Montessori school, which not everyone can go to, or not everyone has access to, be it like because of a financial thing or a geographical thing. But, access to education that works with the student it's very like few and far between, I think.
Agreed, yeah.
So I like to see my role as someone who's there to help the student achieve their goals and be patient with them. And I try to impart the patience and the guidance that I feel like I didn't get in certain educational situations.
So what is the class size and sort of the age ranges of your students?
So again, I'm really privileged where I get to work one-on-one for the most part.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so
Wow.
that's really amazing for me personally, because again, I get to give that student all the attention that they need. And I get to work on their personalized goals. And that also means that every single class is going to be different.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. That's really awesome because you really do tailor the approach, but then you build a rapport, a little bit of a better rapport because you're so concentrated on spending that time really like growing together and saying, I'm here for you and a support.
Exactly. And if there's something that maybe I don't know how to teach, then guess what? We both learn it together. And it's sort of a relaxed environment in that way where, again, I'm viewing my role as a problem solver, right? So what's the goal? Where do we want to go? And where are we at right now? And then we figure out our plan on how to get there. So, I have a pretty wide skill set. And so sometimes we do very like traditional sort of fine art things. Sometimes things err on more of the crafty side, depending on the student. We've done everything from color theory to, working on basic drawing techniques and mechanics. I've had a couple of graphic design students at different levels. I've also done like portfolio building and portfolio review, which I'd love to do more of with my students. So, we do have people who are looking for just something to do. Right. And stay like connected with someone, especially during these times. And then, I get a lot of students that want to have a part-time job or they want to freelance and they need someone who's going to review their current work or help them kind of build like a robust portfolio.
Wow. That's awesome. That's really, really awesome. Yeah. So are you employed by Montclair Studio, or are you sort of like a freelancer and you kind of go wherever needed and you're available for people to call you?
Yeah. So I'm a freelancer, which, it has its merits because it gives me a lot of flexibility. So I get to make my schedule. I sort of work one-on-one with the client, or, if they have a guardian or a parent or an advocate, I might work with them. And, essentially I get to parse out my time where I'm teaching on certain days and certain hours throughout the week. And then I'm able to dedicate another part of my schedule to running my business.
That's awesome. I love that. I really love that. I had no idea. Because, I don't really see you in person, so I didn't know that's what you were doing. That's great. How long have you been teaching this particular sort of sector of?
I think at least 4 or 5 years at this point.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So have you seen some of your students kind of graduate and get into that sort of portfolio, presenting a portfolio, or maybe getting into a university or getting a job that works well with their skill set, with their newly learned skill set?
So one of my students, his name was Brian. He actually came to me because he had done undergrad at Jersey City University. And
my alma mater.
And he felt like he didn't really have a portfolio that was like geared towards his interest, which was print. And so we sat down and we talked about maybe, some different prompts and some different assignments that I could give him so that he could build a more like well-rounded and focused portfolio. And we met, over the course of, I think it was like a summer. So it was a very finite amount of time with Brian, and very quickly, because of our connection, and this was at another organization, but, you see a lot of the same students. But anyway, so at this other organization, our printer, we worked closely with the printer for like printed products. And So the director at the time, kind of gave them a call and was like, well, do you need anyone? Are you looking to hire anyone? Because we have the student here. He's really great. I think there were talks about him maybe designing some print materials for us.
Oh, wow.
And he went into this interview, showed them his work, and they're like, you're great. We love you. And they hired him.
Whoa.
Yeah, so that was really cool. I was sad to see him go because he was one of my favorites, but
you should get into the next level, which is like artist management, where you're like, okay, now I'm going to collect a 5% fee from every.
I mean, that would be smart, right? But, but I don't know that I could. But in either case, and also I'm being paid to like help him.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
So how could I ask for more? But yeah, I really missed him. And he like sent me like Christmas cards every year. Like he's such a sweetie. So I don't know. I love kind of having these relationships with my students where I get to see them flourish and I get to see them achieve their goals.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
That's really awesome. I feel the same way, even though I'm not really in the arts anymore, but with my clients, I'm always like, call me. No, really call me. Like I want to hang out with you. So tell me how this journey led you to start Fern Fossil.
So kind of backtracking a little bit. I worked on a project in grad school, right? So again, like this is where like the story like starts to like it all makes sense in the end, but
it's an artistic journey.
Yeah, we're kind of like taking from here and taking from there, right? Life is not linear, but we have to like weave our story so that people like see a chronological or like a linear story of like I had this idea, now I'm here. Except life doesn't really work that way.
No, it doesn't.
But in either case, so I did a 3-year program at Pratt for industrial design. And one of those, it was 2 semesters. I traveled abroad. We did this 3-way exchange with the Royal College of Art, Imperial, and Keio University in Tokyo. So I lived in, like sort of a suburb outside of Tokyo for like 6 months or something.
Wow.
And then, it was fun. And then another 4 months at RCA. And during this 3-way exchange, there were 2 other schools at, the other respective schools while we were like sort of rotating. And they thought it would be a really great idea with 3 different time zones to have us work on a giant like group project, which really like had its communication challenges. But
sure.
That
was like pre-Zoom, right?
I think there Zoom. I guess it was Skype.
Skype,
we were using Skype. And we were also using Google Hangouts. I don't even think it was Google Meet at the time. It was Google Hangouts. So
you're like an OG in the Google Hangout biz.
It was the worst. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't like this format. Even like when I would talk to loved ones, like I would rather talk on the phone than like do this. But now we're in the age of a pandemic, and we like kind of relish being able to see other people, whether you're an introvert or not. So that makes, I think, these kinds of things for me a little bit easier because I also teach remotely. I haven't seen the studio in almost a year now.
Oh, wow. I failed to ask you that. I assumed that you were just being cautious and keeping a distance, but that adds another level of intricacy when you're working in a very tactile type of environment, right? Because if you're like making something on a 2-dimensional plane, wow, that's crazy.
It was a learning curve, I will say. And it's interesting, like with, talking about this format, there were some students that really surprised me. And then there were like other students that needed a little extra help that I wasn't necessarily expecting to need extra help. So, it's interesting in the way that I think we always have, and again, I've worked with some of my students for several years. For, some of my students, I had, different expectations for how they were going to perform, and they surprised me. And, I think that just goes to show, like, no matter how well you think you know someone, there's always this little bit that can come out and, throw you for a loop.
Yeah. It's true.
Mm-hmm. So, but it's, again, like I said, I'm a problem solver. So it's just, you just need to be patient with yourself, and you need to be patient with your client or your student. And I think the hardest part is probably being patient with yourself.
That's true. And hopefully they're getting support on their end, mm-hmm. where they're, somebody's helping to provide, or, Definitely. Materials and things like that, which I know some other art teachers are having a hard time with.
Oh, well, we have a budget
teaching.
Yeah, we have a budget, so it's a little bit. Yeah, so materials we are always able to send out, within reason, right? Every student has a budget, but we're able to send out some really beautiful, really high quality fine art supplies. Whatever my students need, they get. So there hasn't been, again, it's not like public school, right? I don't want to knock public school, but it's just, it's different.
Right.
It's totally different. And, I will say.
And it's public school. It's your specific experience in a specific public school in a specific place.
Yes. Exactly.
Right. Because if you go to like a suburban town in New Jersey, they'll say like, oh, we have like, I don't know. So they have like some kind of like, they can join a band or something. I don't know. And I'm just like, I'm so unfamiliar with.
Well, yeah, we didn't really.
What is that?
Curriculars. It was, I'm just laughing because like I have a couple of friends from, throughout like the country, and we are always kind of comparing our upbringing and comparing our schooling, especially when we talk about like how sort of like oppressive like public school can be. So we're like constantly having these conversations about it. And, I remember, this particular friend grew up in this, sort of like poor, like rural area of like California. And she was like, yeah, even as poor as we were and as bad as like our teams were, we had like football, and like she started naming all the sports that they had. I was sort of like, we had this like ragtag volleyball team, and then like a basketball team that was pretty good, but like the volleyball team didn't really get any resources. It was sort of sad, but no band.
No band. I mean,
yeah, we were lacking in a lot of our extracurriculars, to the point where they kind of had to like make up classes to keep us in school. Like we didn't have electives. They were just like, and here's another class.
What's hilarious is that I went to private school most of my life, and it was exactly the same. Like you didn't really have much to choose from. Like art was like, it was like art 101. There was that one art class, and then you just took it every year. Mm-hmm. But then it was a great, it was a great kind of study of really using your brain to like, the religion teachers were really like theology teachers, and they were like opening your brain to like, think about other things, man, like don't, and all this, and it was like private school. So there wasn't anybody that was like probably older than 35 teaching us, and it was like, open up your mind, man. Like think about.
Was it Catholic school?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's interesting.
It was really interesting, but it like got me into like wanting to learn more about things that I had like no idea about, like Eastern religions and like meditation and transcendental meditation and stuff. So that's what Catholic school did to me. But like really questioning authority almost. It's like question, why you're here and all this stuff. So that's about like the extent of like the extracurricular activities. It was like it was in your head. You had to like existentially get out of your current space in your head. An extracurricular.
I think my big gripe with public school is that you have to ask to perform a bodily function. So it's like, may I use the restroom? It's like, what do you like? Why am I asking to go pee? Like, I don't understand.
That's my favorite thing in the whole world still. It's like, I have to excuse myself so that you know where I'm going at all times.
It's ridiculous.
Well, it's population control. We're going to get into like we're going to start like a whole conspiracy theory now.
Well, I mean, I have a few things to say about why the public school system is formatted the way that it is, but I digress. That's for another podcast. So
Fern Fossil.
Yeah, back to my windy road of a story. So let's see, we're talking about remote learning, and we're talking.
Oh, you were doing a project.
Right.
Like an international.
Yeah. So the
project.
The prompt had something to do with food. I honestly, I forget what the exact question was, but it was a very like vague question or prompt, and they left it really open-ended so that we could really go wild with it. And then my local partner, right? Because we were paired with, it was a small group of us. We were like 7 people. And the person that I got paired with was also from Pratt. And then we got paired with like a couple or like 3 people from one school and then 3 people from another school. So my local partner had grown up in Camden, New Jersey, which is also like very economically depressed. We sort of had like similar upbringings, believe it or not. Like, so Keith is like very like much African American. Like, we look like total opposites. But somehow like this white girl from Newark and with like, one immigrant parent and, Keith from Camden, like both had really similar upbringings. So I think that probably had something to do with us being paired together. But in either case, we were working on this project and we were talking about food waste, right? Because that was sort of within that umbrella. And, we started looking into, different like solutions and we were looking at planting things. And then we had this moment where God, what was his name? He was our professor and sort of like liaison for that particular program. And he asked us, well, how long does it take to grow a tomato from a seed? And we both looked at each other like, that's a good question. And we both realized we'd never grown anything from a seed before. Like neither of us really had plants in the house growing up. I didn't have a garden. Sure, there were a couple of like trees and like shrubs around, but I mean, if you look at like the block that I grew up on, there wasn't like, I lived across the street from like a mattress factory. Like there were like a bunch of weeds that eventually got paved over. So it like kind of made it look a little bit more clean. But, like in my immediate area, there wasn't a lot to look at. Right. Granted, we have a lot of like really beautiful parks in the city of Newark, but on that particular street, in that particular area, there wasn't really a lot of greenery. Like you would have to sort of like walk, a mile or whatever it was, or like, a couple of miles to get to the park, if that's something that, you were able to do. And you certainly couldn't do it yourself. You had to like walk with a group. And,
yes.
So anyway, so we had this realization that neither of us had ever like cared for plants before, grown plants before. And that sort of like sparked something in me that later on After like finishing my thesis and, which was also centered around plants and, a series of products to get kids interested in agriculture and get kids interested in growing their own food. That sort of led me to Fern Fossil, which was how do I create an experience where anybody feels comfortable planting something for the first time, right? So it's like the gateway into being like a plant mom or dad.
Right.
And terrarium seemed like this really approachable, like entry level thing that anybody can do, right? You don't really have to have any knowledge. And I think that, or you don't have to have any prior knowledge, but I think that when you touch something in your hands, when you're breaking up a root system, when you're planting something, it kind of demystifies the aspect of engaging with that thing. And it demystifies the process.
Right.
And, because a lot of times I find when I engage with, customers, whether it's, at an outdoor event or, what have you, a lot of people will pass by and they'll go, oh, I have a black thumb. I can't keep anything alive. And, my response to that is you just have to try. Like, I kill plants all the time for various reasons. I kill plants because I'm busy doing 10 million different things and I forget to water one that has different needs than the other ones.
Right.
So it's all about finding a plant that works for you. And, again, never give up, be tenacious.
Be tenacious with your plants.
Yeah, exactly. I think, and that's how I try to approach Fern Fossil, is with this ethos of being patient with yourself, being patient with the process. Because I think as humans, we're way too hard on ourselves. And I know this from personal experience. So that's something I really want to put out into the world, which is be patient. You're allowed to fail. I think that a lot of times we, like, collectively as a society, and I also think like women too, I think that maybe men don't experience this as much, but, we don't take risks. We don't take chances. It's not really, in my household, that wasn't really supported. Everything was like, do what you're supposed to do, go to school every day, and, comply. And I don't know. Yeah, and I don't know that fosters like fully functioning adults, and I don't know that fosters, like complete people. I think that we need to be able to take risks and take chances and fail a little bit, not feel badly about it. So, it's a little bit of wanting to put that out into the world. But also, to say like, it's okay. You can try again.
Right.
And it's fine. You might kill a plant one day, but maybe after the fifth one, you found the plant that's right for you.
Right. Right. That's correct. That's such a great view of life in general, where I think, I feel like we have a similar upbringing, and where, I grew up with immigrant parents too. And it's like, well, we came here to work really hard, and that's all we do. And we work really hard. We go to work, we come back, we are really tired, and then we go to work tomorrow again, and it never really fosters the idea of like, try something. That was always looked at as, oh, people who have a lot of money can do that, or people who have the luxury of going to college can do that. Mm-hmm. And, that's kind of where my college experience was a little bit later than everyone else's, because I wanted to find out if I really liked the idea of going to work every day, which I did not. Mm-hmm. And so it kind of brought about what are all of these things that I can learn that I don't know anything about? Like, I was always trying to take a fencing class. I always tell the story about like the fencing class that no one ever signed up for. And every semester I'd be like, yes, I'm going to take fencing. And they'd be like, no one signed up. We're canceling the class. And it's like, why doesn't anyone care about this? It's probably important. It's in the Olympics. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I think probably with that is like equipment probably costs, right? Unless like they have.
No, they had all of the equipment. I would walk by the dance studio and you could see all of I don't know if they were used, but you could see all of the uniforms, the fencing uniforms like hung up. And it's like, why? That's all I wanted to do.
I would have taken fencing with you, just FYI.
Thank you. We should when this is over, you and I should take a fencing class.
Well, I mean, like it's sort of socially distanced, right? Like how close can you get with your little, like, because I know it's not a sword. Is it
you're wearing a mask?
Rapier? Am I making things up? I don't know.
No, it sounds something like that. Yeah. Sounds like rapier or rapier or
something French.
But yeah, and you have a mask on.
Do you have a mask on? I was going to say people are probably going to be watching this and like, where did this go? What are they talking about?
I don't know. This is like the awesome thing about just having a conversation again, where you're like, if you're having a conversation with someone, it could go anywhere.
That's true. So yeah, the accessibility was also always really important for me. And I'm sure like a lot of people are going to look on my website and they're going to be like, whoa, like the retail value of like one of these kits that Fern Fossil offers is not necessarily an accessible price, right? So I think for me, what I initially started doing was I priced things so that I could afford them. Mm-hmm. And then I quickly realized that that was not the way to run a business. And to kind of like still have that element of inclusivity, because that was really important for me, because I did want kids from the neighborhood to be able to have this experience. And, when I would pop up outdoors, I would have these like heavily discounted prices. But it was still, I think, for, some families, especially in this area, it was not necessarily something that, was in their price range.
Right.
So one of the really important things for me was working with the local library. And I was able to provide workshops and work with them through a grant where, kids could come in or, this particular grant, I think was for teens. So, teens and tweens could come in and build a terrarium, learn a little something, we would interact for, an hour or 2 hours. And, I was able to provide that service to people within my community. So that was really, really important to me is, working at that level. But also, again, I still have to run a business. So, my kits reflect a higher price point.
Yeah. And I think if you look on, you probably go through Etsy, right? Or do you go through your own?
Oh, I have we have our own website, and then we also are on Makerhoods Market.
Okay.
So I don't know if you're familiar with Makerhoods at all.
Is it like Etsy?
Yeah. So they've been touted as like the Etsy that is sort of, well, like the Newark centric Etsy, but I think it's bigger than that. Etsy used to be more maker centered, and then they kind of opened it up to like larger manufacturing operations. Yeah, it's really, really hard to tell if you're actually purchasing from someone that's like a real person.
Right.
So a lot of things are mass produced. There's even some like weird stuff where, because I think a lot of people are trying to be a lot more like socially conscious and, like really support like Black businesses. And I've seen instances where like people who are not of color or masquerading as like people of color,
Oh my God.
in a means to kind of like ride the wave and like get the purchases.
Oh my God.
And so Neighborhoods Market is really great in the way that they personally vet all of their makers. If you want to buy Black, you can. And there's a picture of each maker. So there are profiles for everyone. And, the important thing is that you're the one making and selling and representing your product. So
yeah, that's awesome.
It's definitely like heavily vetted by a team of people that are, really incredible, and they really care about what they're doing. And they provide a lot of support to small businesses in the community.
That's great. That's really great. I think if you're looking at something that is well made, and it's not to say that, if you can't afford it, don't buy it, right? That's not kind of the idea. The idea is maybe buy a smaller version of it if you can afford it. But I think,
Or save up.
Or save up. Learn to save up, right? Learn financial empowerment and education by saving up, a few bucks every paycheck and buying it. But the labor costs, right? If you look at it on the other side, the time that it takes for you to make it, the materials that you're sourcing to make it, shipping, all of these things add up. So if you're looking for a product that's already made, that's why products that are made really well cost a lot of money. Products that are made cheaply, that are going to break and are going to be destroyed as soon as you open it are usually, $20.
Yeah. And I mean, you don't necessarily know like who that product is or that profit is benefiting. And I think that people nowadays are like very, very aware of how their money is being spent. They want to support, various causes. They want to build communities. And, we know that, investing in small businesses really means or equates to investing in communities. Yeah.
Agreed.
We know that when we spend $1 with a local small business, it's going to stay within that community for a number of days.
Exactly. Are you planning at all of opening up a brick and mortar at some point?
So I am. I'm actually in the process right now. So we moved. So, all right. At first, I was in a third floor studio of an art building at Index Art Center, and I quickly outgrew that. And we were looking for
in terms of manufacturing all the stuff. Do you have a whole, oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, all the design, all of the graphics, all of the everything, it's sort of a one-woman show at this point. And that's me. And then when I can, I'll try to hire out, especially for larger projects. But so, quickly outgrew the studio space. And I had been storing inventory and product at a warehouse location, and the opportunity to rent the back office there and also the storefront came up. And, it was within my price range, which was really great. So I was, able to move my offices and move the remainder of my inventory to this location. So, we're still in the process of kind of getting the storefront where I want it to be.
Can you disclose
what the location?
Yes.
Oh yeah. So it's a little off the beaten path, but it's over at East Kinney Street and Railroad Ave.
That's actually a hot spot.
Well, yeah. So we're close to, I don't know if you're familiar with All Points West Distillery. So we're actually a couple blocks from them. We're within walking distance. And I love when the weather gets a little bit warmer and things kind of start to open up, I'd love to partner with them again, because we've done plant and sips, with them. But maybe there's some way to partner in the future again. But yeah, we're within walking distance of that. We're like a 7-minute walk from Third Space, which I don't know if you're familiar with them. They're like a co-working space, and they have a coffee shop at the lower level. Do you know where Continental?
Yes.
Yeah. So the
it's a hardware store.
Sorry.
It's an old school hardware store that's been in Newark forever.
So right across the street from Continental, where there used to be that laundromat, right, with the big parking lot, that's now residential up top. Like they built this whole structure. And there's co-working and a coffee shop there.
Oh, that's awesome.
Like a 7-minute walk from there.
Is Hell's Kitchen still there? Oh, they shut down.
They finally closed. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's probably going to be like luxury apartments coming soon.
Who knows?
Who knows? It's all going to be apartments. Whenever there's like a vacant lot or an underutilized building, it's like, it's going to be apartments. Don't worry about it.
Well, at least it'll have retail down at the bottom, because I think depending.
Right. The zoning would probably still give them retail, which is a nice spot to maybe have another restaurant, which is always needed. Because that little end section of Lafayette doesn't really have much going on in terms of like foods and groceries and.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. This is like your big plan, right? Is to like be here at East Kinney Street and have like your maker space and your retail space. And how can someone get in touch with you if they want to reach out to you about either collaborating on something or purchasing one of your terrariums, or speaking to you about your availability to help in your art teaching?
So the short answer is to go to fernandfossil.com, and there is a contact. Exactly. So there's a contact button there, and you can shoot me an email. You can also shoot me an email directly at info@fernandfossil.com. And that's probably the best way to reach me is email. We do have a phone number, but I have a tendency to screen my calls because we get so many robot calls.
Yeah.
But again, if you go to the website and you really want to speak with me directly, shoot me a call. If I don't pick up, leave me a message and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Sounds good. Are you highly active on Instagram? Do you want me to put that out there or no?
Yes. So you can reach me at Instagram. I would prefer communications through email. That's a little bit like more organized for me. You can DM me, but I can't guarantee that I'll get to you as swiftly as I would with an email. You can see, basically a lot of our updates and content and who we're working with on Instagram. That's the most kind of updated platform that we have right now.
Sweet. And I'm going to reach out to you because A, I want to see you, but B, because I'm going to need some of these terrariums for a very nice building that I'm staging is a rental building. So I would love to have some of those.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I'm all about the staging and the, doing indoor decor. It's a lot of fun.
I know, isn't it? That's like my favorite part of my job, but it's nice to like hang out with somebody while you're doing it. So yeah, I'm going to call you. Thank you. Samantha Katehis, thank you so much for being here on my show.
You're very welcome. And thank you, because I had so much fun and it was really great to see you.
See, I told you it was going to be fun because I'm a fun person. You're a fun person. We're just having a good time.
Yeah.
All right. Bye. Thank you.